Zoals je ziet ben ik hier op de Champs-Élysées in Hartje Parijs. Speciaal voor een exclusief interview met niemand minder dan Christine en de Queens. Na dat fantastische debuutalbum is er nu de plaat Chris. En ik mag haar daar persoonlijk over spreken. What has happened? What changed for you personally in the last couple of years?
Oula. I think maybe the most striking difference for me, some relationship to life changed for me because I don't know if you know, but I wrote a first album, a debut album before, and it was kind of like a dreamer album, like the album of someone who believes that literature is better than life. And the second album is very much about actually, literature can start where life happens. Touching can be the beginning of the novel and not just staying in your room. So I think the difference is like a different address to the world. I think the album I finished is way more physical and out in the world than the first one. It's a bit more frontal and there is more defiance sometimes, and it's sometimes more blunt. And I think this is something that came really naturally at some point because maybe I felt like I was stronger, so I could do it. You have to kind of, be able to own it if you're blunt.
Yeah.
And I was maybe feeling more confident to try it. I really do believe in the writing as a force of empowerment. So it's like, and I discovered that power with the first album. Like actually, it's possible to tell my own story and to be empowered by it. So the second album, I went back to the drawing board and I was like, so now I know this is my weapon, the language, and it can give justice and it can probably maybe mend. And so there is also kind of a weird joy for me during the whole record. Even if sometimes it addresses sadness or frustration, there is a joy in just feeling and telling the story. I don't know if...
But is that so easy to do? Because I can imagine that you go in this writing process and there are experiences, personal things that you feel like I want to write about it. And you have to get to that place. You have to be the person that speaks up and tell the stories about yourself.
But I think there are two things, because first when you write, you kind of sublimate. Yeah. So in a way it's not like a conversation. You kind of choose your form, right? So it's kind of soft for that. And also it depends on how you see the writing, but for me it's always been like when I'm not writing a song, I write every day, and it's a place of I can't negotiate with the truth. I have to be honest in the writing. So it's kind of I don't really force it, and I don't really realize how much I'm giving. But in a way, also I'm giving through sublimation. So it's not totally you kind of choose theater to be really sincere. So in a way, it's not obscene. It's kind of like, and also when you write a song, you kind of address a feeling to someone else. So it's not just your story in a way. It's kind of like catharsis. How can I explain that? It's kind of like it's you feel it again, but you made something out of it. So it's different. It's not just when I write a song about sorrow, then it's just not my sorrow. It's a form born out of it, and it's kind of like shared with people. So it's different. So I kind of still relate to it, but I feel weirdly empowered suddenly with it. So this is why I can't really stop writing, because it's kind of like my way to process also things. And for example, I love artists like Perfume Genius, I don't know, because he's owning everything again with his writing, and you can feel it's really personal, but at the same time it's generous and it's just luminous. There is a gesture of sharing it, so it's less solipsistic. It starts also to be something else for other people, I don't know. But you can still very much feel that it starts from something genuine.
Yeah, and you must need the confidence, the guts to go on the stage and to...
But it's weird though, because I think you can totally lack confidence in life and be really, really unbreakable on stage, and I don't know how, and I don't know why.
How does that work for you? Was that immediately there when you thought of developing the first live performances, or you had this idea of the first album and what you wanted to show on the stage for you?
I think before I wrote songs, I wanted to be a stage director actually. So I was a theater kid. So it's always been magical for me, and I always felt empowered by the stage more than in my life. Like sometimes now it's better actually, because of I don't know why. I kind of have more confidence. I think the stage bleeds back into my life in a good way. But before that, sometimes I was like, how come I feel more comfortable on the stage than in a restaurant? How come I'm unable to own everything elsewhere? And I don't know why. I think it's just I think also I love creating worlds, and I love choosing how to express myself in a poetic way. I just always felt more comfortable like that. And sometimes even now, it's better for me now, but sometimes I still have to write a song to express my feelings to someone because I can't say
is it
otherwise.
something that you're, I don't want to say struggling with, but is it, it may sound like a big contrast sometimes, like to come off the stage and then what do? Maybe you just want to see no one and just want to be in your own shelter, or maybe you feel like I want to hear what the people are saying about it, or you...
It kind of changed actually. Before I used to be really like that, like before the stage I was like on my own, and after the stage I was like no. And I think it was because it was also the beginning, so it was so it's a bit impressive also. You kind of like, now it's getting to a place where I share more, but I think it's because time has passed. I'm older now, and
more
also
wiser.
Maybe
this
not.
album is so wise,
or maybe less wise. I don't know. Or maybe wisdom is to lose the idea of wisdom. I don't know.
That's where the album is about.
Yeah. Because this album is very much about also getting lost, but in a good way, you know.
Yeah.
Or accepting to be lost, or be less scared also of trying things out. So, you know, one might say I'm less wise, but maybe I'm more wise. I don't know. But it changed a bit. Yeah, I think also I discovered the power of a team. Also, I think every night on stage I'm with dancers and musicians, and I kind of discovered also the great joy of having people who kind of go along with you in the weird story you invented, you know. I'm like pointing at the direction, I'm like, we are going to go there, and people are like, okay. So it feels like I'm a captain on a ship, and I'm like,
yeah, but I saw that also on your Instagram when you were doing the rehearsals. You were sitting there and you were directing the stage and everything. Can you tell us a little bit, because the show in Amsterdam will be the third one of your tour.
Yeah, true.
In Avos Live. Can you tell us a little bit maybe what we can expect?
Dancing, I'm afraid. Well, especially since this album is so much about physicality and desire, it was impossible not to dance, because for me the dancing is so much about also acceptance and oozing erotism, right? So I have a fantastic team of dancers, new dancers this time, and we've been working on collective writing, so it's quite, sometimes it's not a classical way of it's not like sometimes always pop routine. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4 decorative dancing. It's more like I'd say it's poignant, but I don't know if people are going to think it's poignant. But for me, it is. And I'm not on drugs. I swear.
So many disclaimers in this interview. I love it.
I'm teasing the tour, but and for the stage design, I think it comes from the fact that I come from theatre, but I have not really much reference of other gigs. I'm always thinking of like contemporary theatre or like even opera stage designs to think of a classical gig. So sometimes my technical team, they're like, we can't do that because a gig you have to tour with it, right? So every night is different. It's not like an opera where you have 3 months.
The different venues and all the So
I'm like, can we do that? And they're like, I don't know. But they're really try. But we worked on a form that is kind of like, I don't want to tease everything, but it's really about textures and nothing digital. And I was like, can we work on the paintings? Can we enter a painting? So it's going to be quite sensual and a different way of... I don't know what people actually are going to think of the gig, because I don't think the writing is really classic. It's not a classic gig, I think.
Do you have some other maybe examples or songs or recent albums of people that you think inspire you?
Yeah, I talk about Grimes, and Grimes is a huge inspiration. Some other artists are reproducing their own music, like Empressov or like Abra.
Yeah.
I do love Sophie as well. I think she's amazing. I love Anoni. I think she did a fantastic record recently. I love Kamaya. I don't know if you know.
No, that's the only name I don't know.
She's a great rapper.
Cool.
Yeah, she's doing kind of like a G-funk inspired sound. She's really badass.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And also like because now we're talking about the artists that inspire you also with the live gigs and what they're doing. And for the album, what kind of inspiration did you had for in terms of the music? Because how do you start with a song? So you have this thoughts in your mind. You're gonna write some things down. You're gonna jump into the studio. How does it work for you? Is there first a thought, a lyrics, or the music? How does it?
It often starts with the music, I have to admit. I love to start with production because it's always a great way to get into a zone of... The lyrics rarely are born out of the music. I mean, I almost never write lyrics before it's born out of the production and out of the delivery and the stamina and the rhythm that I find on the production. So I always kind of start with production, actually. And I kind of, when I write an album, I like it to be every day. I'm like sitting and open my laptop and every day I'm kind of like flexing the muscle. And sometimes a miracle happens. And often those are the songs that stay on the album, like they come really quickly, like you don't even have to think about it. It seems like really consistent and you're like, oh. And some other days it's more complicated, but you just like get better at your craft and practice. I think production also is a lot about practicing, about learning how to use filters and delays and reverb and compression, and you have to get better at it. It's kind of like a discipline. Because
you're working in Logic, right? And you're like figuring out all the kind of the samples and all the different tones. And
at the very first beginning, I started with GarageBand, like the blend. But I was experimenting with, I was toying with sounds without knowing what I was doing. And actually, I found interesting things not knowing. Like I was playing with delays and reverb for hours, and then I ended up having cool sounds. And sometimes producers were like, "How did you do that?" I was like, "I have no idea." I just tweaked for hours. You kind of like, I kind of search for textures and colors. So it's. And I like now to learn more about the technique. So I want to understand what I'm I'm searching for, what I'm doing
in life and in the studio.
Because it can be faster also. You can have a lot more efficiency. But yeah.
And for the writing process is something I found very interesting because of course you're making the album in both French and both English.
Yes.
And at 3FM, the radio station, we're we're always playing the French songs.
Okay. Yeah.
And how was it for you to write those songs? Because do you maybe have had some songs that were like, I also have to write it in English, or this one is very hard to translate? Were there a couple of songs that you found?
I wrote most of the album. I wrote it in French actually because the reference of sounds were actually more American. Like I was, digging like a cameo, the G-funk, the Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis aesthetics. So I was like, it's interesting to write first in French, so I kind of work on like a more weird musicality, and then draw it back to English. And actually, the songs that ended up on the albums were the ones that were easy to translate. It was kind of like a good crash test also for the song, because if I could translate it, it's because I really knew what I was talking about. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And if the song crumbled in translation, I was like, that's probably because I don't really know what I'm saying, And it was not really painful to do. I kind of became a technique also. I could bounce back from one version to another. Phonetically, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so, it was like lots of work to do, but also it felt good to know that I could try to relate more if I could.
I love the picture that you tweeted of the Google Translate screen, like, this sums up my life, it's kind of words. Thanks a lot for your time.
You're welcome.